Hello and welcome. You're watching My India, My Life Goals here on the TV9 network. I am Krishna Kumar. This is a campaign where the TV9 network has collaborated with India's Union Ministry for Culture. And as part of this campaign, we are creating an awareness drive for the citizens of India, for the citizens of Bharat to follow their life goals, as in LIFE, lifestyle for environment, as coined by our Honorable Prime Minister Modi. Now, as citizens, we always keep talking about our fundamental rights, but we don't talk enough really about our fundamental duties. And as part of the My India, My Life Goals campaign, we're holding a series of webinars titled TV9 Digital Baitak. And in these TV9 Digital Baitaks, we are taking up all those fundamental duties of all of us, 11 of them in fact. And one of those 11 fundamental duties is caring for and protecting the environment. And on this particular TV9 Digital Baitak, we are focusing on the theme, Bharat, the Vishwa Guru, leading global climate agenda. And joining us on this TV9 Digital Baitak is Ulka Kelkar, Director Climate Program, World Resources Institute. Dr. Manish Kumar Srivastav, Senior Fellow, Earth Science and Climate Change Division at TERI. Vimlendu Jha, environmentalist, TEDx speaker and CEO Swechha, Green the Map and MAC member 10 YFP. Mahesh Chandra Mehta, environmentalist. Thank you to all of you for taking time out to be with us as part of TV9 Digital Baitak. Let me begin with Ulka Kelkar. Talk to us, Ulka, about India's ability really at this stage to drive the global climate agenda. At every COP summit, you're seeing the importance of India, mainly because of its ability already to meet the emission norms and hence set the agenda for the future going forward.
Thank you so much. Yes, India has always been a very unique country in the climate change negotiations because although its contribution to the problem has been minimal, its achievement of its announced targets has always been ahead of schedule. And it is really a unique developing country, an emerging economy, a large population that is trying to chart a different path to development. So we are saying that we will not follow the same path that the Western economies have followed, where in reaching where they are today in terms of their economic success, they have also caused a lot of damage to the environment, not just locally, but also globally. So what we are saying is that we are envisaging a different path to development, one that uses clean energy, one that tries to create green jobs for its population, and one that also tries to have resilient and sustainable infrastructure that we are building. And this is something that is not easy. No other country has done it before. And in the negotiations, India has always tried to highlight this issue, that there is a lot that can be done. There's a lot of potential. The bottleneck tends to be finance. Public finance, of course, but also it is very important to have a very vibrant investment sector, the private investment sector. So these are some of the different challenges that India is grappling as we go along. As you know, we have set a target of 2070 to reach net zero emissions, but a lot is being done right now and in the near decades, which will transform the way we live, the way we work, the way we travel, and the way we produce.
Mr. Vimlendu Jha, environmentalist and TEDx speaker. Mr. Vimlendu Jha, talk to us. Bharat, the Vishwa Guru, really, when it comes to setting the global climate agenda, pre-colonization, Bharat was originally setting the original global climate agenda, either way.
See, it's too early to say just now, right now, that India is a leader. India can be a leader in future. India, if does right things at the right time, and at the right pace, it can be really setting the tone for the world for the next several decades. Indeed, one thing that we've realized as what the world realizes, that the previous models of development or the previous format, the template that we had on which countries like America or European countries became prosperous or so-called developed, is not the model that is sustainable, that is completely unsustainable. And countries like India and China also were trying to, perhaps in the last 70 years, were trying to follow that template of growth, of development, of infrastructure. And a lot of times that model of increasing per capita consumption of energy is counterproductive. And that's what we've seen, that the climate has deteriorated globally is because of these 7 countries, or these richest countries of the world actually have created the most amount of damage in that sense. Right now, I see India as a place which has a great opportunity. India, if really looks at development from a different lens, from an inclusive lens, from a sustainable lens. Indeed, India's cultural heritage has been very, very sustainable. India, before we've started talking about conservation or for that matter, recycling and upcycling, we've actually, forget about the last century, in this century, in our own lifetime, we've seen those lifestyles that our parents and our grandparents adhered to without really watching a documentary on climate change. So indeed, it is conservation or minimal consumption or responsible consumption is in the DNA of most of our people. In fact, imagine the idea of nature worship or respect towards nature is integral to our religious beliefs and cultural beliefs across religion, across tribal cultures and sub.
Right. Let me take this across to... stay with us. We have Dr. Manish Kumar Shrivastava, Senior Fellow, Earth Science and Climate Change Division at TERI, joining us now on the broadcast. Dr. Shrivastava, tell us, in your view, do you think India has sort of taken pole position when it comes to setting the global climate agenda, especially because of the climate challenges it faces itself?
Yeah, thank you for having me in this discussion. I think India has, since beginning, been setting the agenda of global climate governance, starting from articulating the position on equal per capita emissions and the way India led the interests of developing and least developing countries in the formative years of the Framework Convention on Climate Change in early 90s. And this continues. I would even say that the direction that the global negotiations take in terms of agenda is one way or another influenced and determined by what position India takes. And also hints, I would give the example of, say, International Solar Alliance that tells the path of collaboration and working together that all countries need to follow in order to address the challenge. It's really up to other countries, particularly the developed countries, to take the lead. I would also, in that sense, I'm reminded when you mentioned the lifestyle issue, the climate change negotiations had begun with US taking a position that American way of life is not negotiable. And since then, India has been arguing, along with other developing countries, that lifestyles it is that needs to be negotiated. And the mission on life puts that point on the table very strongly and firmly.
Right. Stay with us. Let me also take this across to environmentalist and Padma Bhushan, Mahesh Chandra Mehta ji, who also joins us on the broadcast. Thank you so much, Mr. Mehta, for taking time out to be with us. Talk to us. Tell us, from your perspective, are we doing enough to ensure that we lead the global climate agenda as a country?
Yes. Thank you. I would say that India is a Vishwa Guru, but now we have to do a lot of things where it has to retain its position. The situation which I tell you, that even if we will not keep our house clean, this beautiful country, then what will happen? We can't claim that we are the Vishwa Gurus. And you see that the Mother Ganga, it is this river which is worshipped all over the country and from world over. the situation, here that even this, we could not clean the river Ganga, despite, efforts by so many the governments from time to time. And this is a major challenge first to us, that why are we capable, this country can produce that model. And for that model, I think that India needs to do many things, to be very frank. And the first is that the Himalayas are in a very serious situation right now. See the climate change over here, and then the rivers, and then the destruction which is taking place because of the floods and everything. So we have to be very realistic. If we say that yes, we are the Vishwa Gurus, and I think in my view, it will not be a good say that yes, we are. Yes, we were at one time when the Vedas, when all the Rishi Munis, in this country, they were the leaders at that time, and they showed the path to the whole world. And that is why, that we can say that there was a time when the Bharat was Vishwa Guru. And now again we have to work hard to become again the Vishwa Guru if the collective efforts are made. And in that collective efforts, the government has to be very serious. Political leadership of all parties has to be very serious. And then the individual's responsibility. We have sufficient laws. We have we have the rights and we have the duties. And one of the duties that every citizen of India has to protect environment, rivers, lakes, and have compassion for animal life. We have so many other things. So apart from laws, the Constitution, the fundamental duties and fundamental rights, they itself, define many things, that what we have to do. So I don't want to give a long thing of lists, but I would definitely say that yes, we need to make efforts, and where from the government officials down leadership down to the individuals, it has to be taken very serious. And only then we can, yes, Bharat can become a Vishwa Guru, and Bharat can show the path to the whole world. Not only to this world. Now, even the other, the space is also very in serious threat. And similarly, beyond that. So we are not talking about this planet Earth only. We are talking about beyond this planet Earth also. So we have to be visionary. The leadership has to be visionary. And if the leadership is visionary, then the collective responsibility if we take, individuals, all citizens of this country, as well as the leadership has to lead. And that is what I feel that India has the capacity and the capability to become the Vishwa Guru.
Right, stay with us, sir. Let me take this back to Ulka Kelkar, Director Climate Program, World Resources Institute, who's also with us. Ulka, talk to us, India as a country has been collaborating with other nations and other global organizations, climate organizations to meet its own climate goals. How much progress do you think is being made on that front, and what do you think needs to be done going forward?
Thanks, that's a very good question. I think on renewable energy in particular, we have not only been achieving our targets, but we have, as Manish mentioned, created these global platforms, global consortiums like the International Solar Alliance, which brings together all of the countries which have a lot of solar potential, and they work together to scale up the implementation of renewable energy. The difficult part of this whole challenge will lie in the industrial sector, because there are many parts of our industry which is growing. We need more cement, we need more steel, but many of these processes are not so easy to electrify and then to replace fossil fuel electricity by renewable electricity. These chemical processes in the way we make steel or the way we make cement, these are harder to mitigate the emissions from. So here again, India is entering into technology partnerships with organizations abroad in order to bring some of these new innovative technologies and scale them up in India. The third is on the finance side. Here again, there are many innovative things that are being done in India. For example, you may not know that many states in India are trying to identify what share of their budget is going towards green activities. Now, this they are doing because they know that it is not easy to access finance from abroad, but at least the domestic resources, the budgetary resources that we have, we should make sure that they are going towards climate friendly activities. So that is another example of how India is also doing a lot domestically. The challenge is going to be, of course, that as we do all of these things, as we get cleaner energy, greener industrial processes, public transport, all of this, there will be special issues that arise for the unique Indian context where other countries may not be able to help us. I'll give you a simple example. For example, when we have solar parks in India, often they come up on land where previously there was some sort of agriculture. Maybe it was very difficult agriculture, dry land, rain-fed, subject to the vagaries of the monsoon. So for the farmers, of course, something like the revenue that they get from leasing their land to a solar farm is perhaps a more stable income option than having to depend on the uncertain rains. But what happens is sometimes for the landless laborers or for the pastoralists who are grazing their animals on this land, they may not have the access to that land and to those livelihoods anymore. So India can think of an option where agri-photovoltaics is tried out. That is, we have coexistence of both the solar panels and of farming. Maybe it could be vegetable farming, or maybe it could be sheep grazing. So these are the kinds of interesting demonstrations that India can do going ahead. And in India, scale is always there. It drives down costs. Another example, I think you yourself mentioned it, is things like circular economy, where as we go forward, having more batteries in our vehicles or more wind power turbines, there will be a lot of e-waste generated. But in this e-waste will also be this great value of certain critical minerals, which is difficult for India to import and difficult for India to find domestically. So jobs can be created based on a circular economy approach, where the waste of today becomes the value of tomorrow.
Right, stay with us. Let me take this across to Dr. Manish Kumar Shrivastava. Talk to us, Dr. Shrivastava, in terms of how India aligns with the United Nations' own Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs.
Well, sustainable development goals are very wide. I see the description of or the listing of SDGs as an articulation for justice, not only environmental but social justice as well. So that is a very important agenda where a lot more deliberation and discussions are needed. But I would say that that's an area where the conversations are not really going forward in a very promising way. Yes, we have these kind of thumb of rule kind of assessments that if we have renewable energy, then it is going to be sustainable. If we have more energy efficiency or certain types of new industries, that would be more sustainable. But if we look at the entire list of sustainable development goals, there are important trade-offs. And we need to think about how we are going to address those trade-offs. The important challenge, I think, is to make sure that as we move on to climate agenda and pursue some specific economy-oriented, economy-related sustainable development goals, we must focus that in this process, certain inequities are not only are addressed. These trade-offs can create a possibility that certain segments of society or certain parts or aspects of environment, say biodiversity or water quality, they get compromised. So we have this. These trade-offs need to be discussed more. Whereas I see in the policy discussions at the global scale, they are more focusing on synergies alone. That's where I think India needs to bring its own stories, some of failure, some of success, to create a platform and highlight those questions. This is important for India because India represents the diversity of challenges that majority of developing and least developed countries and some of the developed countries will eventually face. So India's stories will be kind of a representative of the world's possibilities of good and bad. So this has to be taken a little bit more objectively and as a case study of what can be done, what needs to be done, what we need to be careful about.
Right, Mr. Vimlendu Jha, I want you to comment on this. In terms of aligning with those sustainable development goals, it's not simple, and it will take a full concerted, a fully willed effort from India's end to ensure that there is an alignment over there.
Absolutely. So if you look at all the 17 SDGs, a lot of them, in fact, all of them actually have a clear mandate to look at how do we look at life forward. And it has also an underwritten thing called intergenerational issues of equity. Because if you look at life underwater, if you look at talking about end of poverty, if you look at sustainable cities, looking at food systems, all these SDGs primarily are talking about not just about how do we look at things today, but how do we look at things for tomorrow, and how do we not, it's not just about how much is our per capita consumption or how well fed am I, but it's also about the rest of the people. So equity and justice is very, very integral in all of these SDGs. And right now, if you look at as much as, one could look at these SDGs being formulated several years ago. There is also a report card on all these SDGs, but these need to be, these policy documents need to be translated on ground. It just can't be a fancy seminar agenda called Sustainable Development Goals, but it needs to really get into our policy papers, and also it needs to get down into our action papers. So when we are imagining sustainable cities, and that's where we will have to look at our sewage system, we will have to look at our energy. We cannot just, there is also every time these days when we talk about climate change, a lot of that climate change conversation gets into energy, gets into just transition. There's much more to sustainability than energy. Energy debate cannot take over the entire climate change debate. The way we are managing our water bodies, the way we are managing our waste, the way we are managing our lifestyle. And therefore, one needs to be very, very cautious that what Mr. Mehta was talking about in seminal work that Mr. Mehta has done over the last several decades, that as much as we want to go forward, it's very, very important to look at clear out the mess that we're leaving behind as well. Our landfills that we're talking about are actually become land hills. Our rivers that we've seen 9 months are completely toxic in case of Yamuna, and 3 months right now we've seen it flooding. And that's where we should talk about sustainable cities, how we have actually developed over cities and our floodplains. What is happening in Ganga, what Mr. Mehta was talking about, that we built on the waterways, what's happening in Himachal. So we will have to have a very, very holistic view, and not just a very, a lot of times we bring in these fancy science and language of conference into basic commonsensical conversation on how to build and how much to build and when to build. It is about a lot of the problem that our world is facing today is because of that development, and this entire confusion that we try to create, that we need to strike a balance between development and environment. No, there's nothing called a balance between sustainability and environment. We will have to be sustainable. Your right to move faster on a highway, that can't be more important than your right to breathe clean air. As simple as that. And there is no confusion there, and there cannot be a developmental debate that should happen on basic right to life versus right to property, or right to leisure, and right to a fancy mobile phone, and right to a holiday, and right to a faster car.
Right. Stay with us. Let me take this conversation across to Mr. Mehta only, since you brought him up so wonderfully. Mr. Mehta, tell us, if I were to ask you, our top 3 priorities according to you at this stage to ensure that we continue telling the world how to deal with climate change.
In my view, that the 3 things are very important. The air, what we breathe, it is highly polluted now, and then the second thing is that water. These are in priority. These are the priorities of life. So the water, whether it is a rivers, groundwater, whether it is a sea, or wherever the water is, we have to keep it clean. That is the most important thing, whether it is by the governments or by the individual efforts of the people. If the people, they become really a force and tell the politicians of this world that they can't survive without these things, and the people are raising their voice. And that is very important, because unless there is awareness, the people can't do anything. The people, from people to people, and that should be the context, not the governments. The governments, they come and they go, but the people will remain there. It is a inter and intra-generational principle. Where is that now? So all these things have to be taken into confidence and try to bring the real change in the society and in the country. I have been all over the country, and I see whether it is the Himalayas, whether it is the seas, or whether it is any place in India, I have not seen that this is the clean agenda, And if we say that yes, we will become Vishwa Guru, I think that's the wrong thing. And we should not say that thing. Yes, we should, and we were earlier,
Yes.
many the centuries back. It was everything was good, in the sense that the rishis, they were handling the rajas, the kings, they were obeying the advice of the gurus.
Right.
And the rishi munis, they were the people, those who were the real environmentalists.
Right. Stay with us. Let me take this back to Ulka as well. Ulka, talk to us, at this stage, companies, Indian companies, and the way they are sustainable, because, they also, the talk in the corporate world is all about the ESG, or environmental and social goals that companies will have to meet. There is a place there for, again, India to lead the world in terms of being sustainable.
Yeah, they're absolutely right. There is definitely a move in the corporate world towards more sustainability, disclosure, reporting, internal, what is called carbon pricing, and also carbon trading. But a lot of this has happened, in fact, because of pressure from people like us, from shareholders, from consumers who are concerned about the sustainability of the products that they purchase. But these initial steps have to lead to more deeper shifts in technologies and fuels. To a large extent, companies are adopting renewable energy, but just like I mentioned earlier, there need to be changes in the way things are produced, in the processes that are used, in the supply chains also. So it is not enough for the big company to take on action or to take on a target, but all of the micro, small and medium enterprises that supply parts to that big company, they also need a lot of hand-holding. In India, you'd be surprised to know there are more than 100 million people who work in the micro, small and medium enterprises sector. And 97% of these are micro, so they're really small. Even though there's a lot of potential to shift to cleaner technologies, in fact, to save costs in doing so, they lack the capacity, the bandwidth, or the access to financing in order to be able to make these shifts. So we need more genuine, deeper sort of implementation of climate action. Having said that, a lot of our analysis shows that new jobs will be created in green electricity, in infrastructure as India scales up its renewable energy or green hydrogen production, and also in manufacturing. For example, as India shifts to greater manufacturing of electric mobility, there will be a need for more specialized, skilled employees. And that is also something that must be given a lot of attention by Indian industry. That is, they should not worry that if they skill their workers, they'll lose them to someone else. But they should really think of this as investing in the human capital for the future. So that is something that I would feel is really very important. Everything doesn't look like climate action. Everything doesn't look like sustainability. But all of these actions, skilling, finance, reporting, have to go hand in hand in order to actually achieve the targets that are being announced. The government is also doing a lot. For example, the PLI, production-linked incentive schemes that are being announced, for very specific technologies like green hydrogen or for new types of battery chemistries. And these are also meant to be an incentive for companies to make these shifts and to really build or expand the ecosystem of climate action in India.
Right. Good point there. I want to take this across to Dr. Manish Kumar Srivastav. Proactive policy making is going to be crucial, isn't it? If India, every single time it shows up at the COP summit, or when when the questions of its SDG comes up, it's important that there is proactive policy action for it. Dr. Srivastava.
Absolutely. India has historically been a policy-driven country. All other actors, by and large, wait for policy. And of course, policy change itself, as Fulka was saying, that comes from a lot of public pressure and deliberation and dialogue and research. So that's very important. Just wanted to add to the previous conversation on role of private sector and policy. I think one area where something more fundamental and concrete needs to be done is the area of developing more indigenous technologies, private sector investing more in R&D. Performance there has been not very, celebration worthy, I would say. But it's more important from the point of view of the smaller producers, because the technologies that are relevant, that would be relevant for the micro or medium or small scale enterprises, those are not going to come from abroad because they don't have those industries. So they would not put in their resources in developing the technologies or practices, or set up best practices for better value chain management, creation of market, skill building. That's an area where both industry and policy have to work in tandem. One example I can think of is, and this is, we are in different way talking about a new industrial revolution, which is going to be green and more equitable. And the original industrial revolution happened through spinning and textile sector. I'm fascinated by the possibility that sector, and particularly the handlooms there, which are zero energy or minimum energy consuming sectors, can employ a number of people to create low amount of produce but dignified livelihoods. So I think something that promotes handloom and also probably align it with organic farming, that policy and industry can really demonstrate that way there. Innovation not only in technology but products, markets, and connecting and working with different types of products and market mechanisms.
Right, innovation and technology. Mr. Vimlendu Jai, there's innovation needed at both levels, both from policy making level and from the industry level in terms of coming up with innovative ways to generate green energy. But you have to admit that, especially driven by the efforts made, especially in the south of India, India has been leading on many counts and across many renewable energy sources, and in that sense, being able to contribute to those, to the global climate goals.
Yes, absolutely. As in, there is that shift to renewable energy, and we've seen, western part of India and south of India actually taking a lead in that. But with that real jump and conversation about solar panels and wind energy, the big conversation that is actually happening globally and in India is about what happens to people who were actually traditionally working in the coal sector, or the idea of just transition. As you know, all of the coal was actually in the east of India, and most of the renewable energies in the west of India. We talk about millions and millions of people, towns and settlements and cities that are completely run till date on coal. And coal, by coal, I don't just mean electricity. By coal, I mean townships and mining efforts and everything else. So there's a lot of conversation globally that is happening about in many other countries, that how do we take people out of coal? Not just from the consumption point of view, but also from the production point of view. Is it possible, just because we want a greener world, do we have the right to push people towards poverty? And that is what exactly is the main fear. And at the same time, look at how do we bring in innovation in this transition as well. So we need, no doubt, we need to transition from a bad fuel to a somewhat better fuel. No fuel is the cleanest. So therefore, if someone tells you that solar is completely clean and wind is completely clean, there's nothing called, energy can never be clean, as in, 100%. It can just be a notch better than the other, like how when CNG came in Delhi, we thought CNG was clean fuel. No, it's a cleaner fuel. Similarly, electricity right now, when we talk about electric vehicles, it's slightly cleaner than petrol, because at the end of the day, our electricity also comes from thermal power plants. So we might not be using burning diesel or petrol in our car, but we are actually burning something, or are burning coal or our fossil, perhaps 200 kilometers from our city limits, and therefore we want to pretend that electric cars are clean cars. These are cleaner cars. So we will need to break it down, bring in scientific temperament. Indeed, we need to get into more than the problem and the core of life, by the way, globally, is it's not just about if you were buying 5 shirts every week, for last 10 years. Please, instead of buying cotton shirts, start buying organic cotton. That's not the solution. It's about, do you actually need five shirts? Do you need to actually buy 5 shirts every week? Can you do with 1 shirt a month? And that has to be the mantra. The shift of technology, the shift of production processes, these will all, in next 30 years, the problem of Delhi, for example, I want to give you, is that the problem is not of, should we shift from petrol or diesel-based vehicles to CNG-based vehicles or to electric-based vehicles. Our challenge, and we will never be able to solve the problem of environment and air pollution if we keep making these moves. The solution is that, can we move to public transport? Can we reduce the number of cars itself? Reduction is the solution, shift is not, and that is the core of life that needs to be looked at. This entire industry-based agenda of, this car versus that car, and therefore but the number of cars should remain the same, is a propaganda and an agenda-driven debate around sustainability, and not really talking about actually saving this planet.
Fascinating, Vimlendu Jha. Stay with us. Let me take this across to Mahesh Chandra Mehta ji also. Mr. Mehta, the change, for people to adopt to that change, there's a change in the mindset. It's not just about which car to buy. It's all about, do you even need that car? Why are you going to buy that car in the first place?
Yes. Let me say first thing, that like I give you an example, like the environment has become a compulsory subject all over the country. And the judgment in this case came in 90s. And after this, so many petitions were filed, contempt petitions also, and where that the attitude of the governments, the state governments and the central government was very, very, negative. And in the sense, that if the awareness, as my friend has said already, that sensitization on various issues is very important. And for that, the environment awareness, where is that? We say that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to protect environment, rivers, lakes, and have compassion for animal life. Where is that duty? So this, all we have to take into account, that yes, it is very important that first the children, from child to the old person, people, everybody should be sensitized, and that is what should be the first thing. Now, I have to file 3 times, the contempt petitions, and in that, now all over the country, the qualified people are there, those who can teach properly. They have done even PhDs and all that, and they are just sitting idle. No, utilization of their talent is there. And so what has to be done? So there is more than that other things, it is important that first that every child, from a child to the old, the senior citizen, we should be conscious that what we have to do. And every day we just keep the every dirt under the rug, and then when somebody does not see, we just throw it out. This attitude has to be dealt with. So all this, what I am saying, that whatever the environmental laws in India are, they are sufficient. Even if the 70 or 60% of these laws are obeyed properly, implemented and enforced properly, the things will change. The Himalayas will be saved. The rivers can be saved, and the whole flora can be saved, and the people's life and health can be saved.
Right, and for the implementation to happen, there needs to be greater awareness, isn't it, Ulka? It happens on both ways. One is that there is enough and more environmental laws that we have; they need to be implemented well. And for implementation to go off very well, if people are proactive about their own life goals, about their own environmental goals, then India can very well continue to lead the world in terms of climate goals.
Absolutely right. And there is scope for implementation in every aspect of our lives. For example, Vimalendu spoke very passionately about not needing cars, but certainly we can all take electric buses. There's no need to transport our goods by freight trucks. We can do so by railways. And the railways also have a target to become net zero by as early as 2030. Even in rural areas, Vimalendu, for example, spoke about what will happen if coal mines or coal-based power plants are eventually phased down. But there is definitely a lot of room to make these rural economies more vibrant, more diversified by having restoration-based livelihoods. That is, having food processing industries that are linked to, for example, more agroforestry, more horticulture-based plantations. There are, for example, a lot of efforts being done by organizations like mine and also, say, Selco Foundation, where they're trying to make sure that every school, every hospital in a rural area is powered by solar. And we saw during the pandemic that they actually saved a lot of money by not having to pay diesel costs to run their ventilators, but they could actually get reliable electricity through solar. One interesting fact, for example, is that in India, if you look at all the women factory workers, about 70% of them are working in the southern states. Here, there is a lot of initiatives being made by private companies that if there are new factories being set up, say for electric vehicle assembly lines, they will hire only women or have women-only dedicated assembly lines. So whether you are a student who is buying 5 shirts a week, or whether you are a corporate CEO or a big person who is in a position
You're
to hire
referring to the Ola's scooter factory in Krishnagiri near Tamil Nadu.
Many other companies as well. So definitely in whatever we do, there is a lot of scope to make greener choices, to have less wastage, and to have more responsible production and more sensitive consumption.
Sensible and sensitive to climate consumption. I'm going to ask Vimalendu Jha for a quick last comment. Mr. Vimalendu Jha, if one thing that we need to keep in mind for Bharat, the Vishwa Guru leading global climate agenda as individuals and in terms of what we need to do in both at a personal level and our engagement with the public.
See, environmentalism cannot just be a page 3 South Delhi and elite conversation. It needs to be a conversation for everyone. And every time we actually talk about environment and sustainability and climate change, we'll have to think about the last person in the line. And as much as, on paper, India would be, 5th or 4th largest economy, reality is that there are several thousands and millions of people in India who actually are still living in distress situations and distress resource situation and livelihood situation. And when to think about our consumption, every time you flush 14 liters of water to flush down your excreta, it is at the cost of somebody's drinking water. And therefore, something as basic as that, and I'm sorry, I'm finishing. You're ending your chat show.
No.
Excreta,
please go ahead.
It is important
this
to
is
have
this is a Baitak to deal with the realities and the truth around
Absolutely.
us, even as we understand the good of what is around us and how we need to take it forward. We need to understand where it's more crucial to be realistic.
Absolutely. So therefore, we need to look at every time the resource that you use, is it at the cost of our planet and is it at the cost of someone else? Think about it before you consume. And the other thing, the last point is, there's a lot of awareness. For the last 30 years, we've been teaching and we've been learning in schools, say no to plastic bags, say no to firecrackers. There is awareness. Time for awareness is over. Time for action needs to begin.
Time for awareness is over. Time for action is here, is the word coming in from Vimalendu Jha. And with that, I'm afraid we've completely run out of time here on this TV9 Digital Baitak. I'm going to begin by thanking Mr. Mahesh Chandra Mehta, Padma Bhushan environmentalist. Thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Mr. Vimalendu Jha, environmentalist and TEDx speaker. Dr. Manish Kumar Srivastav, Senior Fellow, Earth Science and Climate Change Division, TERI, and Ulka Kelkar, Director, Climate Program, World Resources Institute. Thank you all of you for taking time out to be with us here on this TV9 Digital Baitak. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of My India, My Life Goals. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it with the TV9 network.